Welcome back to Leadership Rediscovered with Laura Siebold. This episode is a continuation of last week's episode. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, we suggest you go back and listen to part 1.
Do you have certain rules that you or practices that you follow around the minimum amount of coaching that you'll do for someone, or do you have a standard rhythm that you like to follow for people?
My standard rhythm is if they're getting value, they're going to continue to have me as a coach.
Yeah.
I didn't get in the coaching business to say, oh, I have a coach, I've got to make this much money. And if you forget to call me and cancel your meeting, I'm going to charge you and all that. I could do that.
Yeah.
But it's, I think as long as the client's getting value, they're going to do that. But that doesn't mean that some people don't put in those parameters, because there could be somebody that's just got so many coaching clients that they need that. A little bit more less flexibility, right?
Yeah.
I was saying more rigidity, but that's not it. But
I think the type too, like a lot of times I feel like when I'm coaching people, it is focused on some kind of behavior change, and that takes a little bit of time. So I a lot of times won't do less than about 3 months of a coaching package as an example, because it's if they have an expectation that in 50 minutes we're going to solve all the world's problems, that's not a realistic expectation. So sometimes I'll do more of like, hey, just recognize, especially if we're going for a behavior change or a habit change, this stuff takes time to build, and you're building the relationship as well as you go through that.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, it can be different things for different people and different types, but the behavioral, and sometimes on the career coaching, when things build on each other, I mean, you would assume. But even with that, if I do put a package together, if somebody's doesn't feel I'm the right coach, and I think that's important. I don't know if you were going to touch upon that, but finding the right coach, right? There's got to be a connection. There's some really good coaches who just don't connect with the client, and that's okay. Especially especially when we're doing executive coaching at with a company, and the company's spending a lot of money. Yeah, you want to make sure that there is a good connection and a high trust level between the coach and the executive, because a lot of times, not only are they spending a lot of money towards that coaching, those coaching sessions, but you don't. When an executive is asked if they want coaching or told they need coaching, you can go through the motions in coaching, right? I mean, the client can be like, here's this and that.
Check the box.
And the coach figures that out.
Yeah.
So you really want there to be a great relationship, because I want everybody who I'm coaching, all my clients, to know that, we're doing this for you.
Absolutely. Yes.
I might get paid.
Yeah.
But again, if you're not finding value,
no, that's not fulfilling for us as a coach either. I don't want to waste their time. I want them to get value out of it. And if they get value out of it, then I get value out of that.
And it's funny, because there's many coaching calls as we're getting to the end. And my mind is like, this has not been a good call. You know what I mean? I'm just in my mind, I'm like, man, I want this to be valuable and all that. And it's like, what's your takeaway? And they're like, bang. And I'm like, okay. But again, because I shouldn't feel that way, because it's not about me, right?
No, but I get it, because
I'm charging you this much money for this hour, and we've got to get everything perfect. And
I do that too. I want people to have literally like a transformational, life-changing experience every time we have a coaching call.
In 53 minutes.
Exactly. And so my expectations for what I try to deliver are out of sight. But I've been asking folks even this week things like takeaway and what's been helpful. And it's amazing to me sometimes how it's really just the little things. Someone shared something with me that they've really not been able to talk about with anybody else. And they were just like, wow, that felt really good to just get that off my chest.
That's the win.
Great.
Worth it. Or even, it's interesting, like, you're 12 minutes in and you ask a question and you watch their face and then you hear this, or wow, that's a great question, or and that's what starts to unlock it.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, what do we do now for the next? But it's
mic drop.
Yeah, exactly. We done?
We're
you
good?
But yeah, it and that's why, again, it's about the client, right? And it's keeping open that hour. This is the hour for you.
This is your time.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's really cool how when you're open to that and they're open for the exploring.
Yes.
Right? That how it just works out.
Yeah.
When we talk about changing perspectives, when we talk about clarity, when we talk about vision, again, the we part of it is just me asking questions and really listening and, making sure that, even I pare it back sometimes. Here's what I just heard you say.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure they heard what they just said.
Yes.
How's that sitting with you? And you hear this, or, you can tell when they're getting stuck in the dance. Okay, let's pull this back a little bit. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
Because you changed your demeanor, changed your counting. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
going on?
Yeah. What's happening there? And there's times you ask a question, you think that's the rabbit hole they're going down. You ask it, and they're like, "I don't want to talk about that."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then where do you want to go with it?
Yeah, it's really not up to us to decide. Even though I think sometimes our spidey sense is trying to tell us, like, "Ooh, there's something over here that needs to be. We need to pick up that rock and look underneath it." Yeah, but it's not up to us to decide that for someone.
Yeah. Let me ask you one question. We're talking about asking questions. What are just some questions as you're coaching your clients that seem to invoke that, wow.
Yeah. I think what's most important to you about that. So for example, if someone has a goal that they've set, I need help achieving this goal. Okay, well, how did you come to that? Or even when we start coaching conversations, we typically ask, what do you want to talk about today? And so someone's saying, what's important about that thing? Because of all the things you could choose to talk about, you chose this one thing. And so trying to get a sense of what's important about that, because it's tying back to motivations, values, and those are the things that's really driving behavior. And I think sometimes people don't take that step back to think about and reflect on what is most important to me and why.
That first question, I think that, the setup, right? What do you want to talk about today? Sometimes you're 12 minutes into your thing and they've got like 27 things. And it's like this and this and that. And so then you're right. Then you bring back, okay, of all of those, what do you want to focus on? What's important, right? What, because it's helping the client. Okay. We don't have time to talk about all 8 of those, but which one do you what's most important? And I think too, and asking them, what would a win look like by the end of our time? And I forget that sometimes because I'm like, that's what they said. Let's go.
Let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what
would that look like?
So if this is what you want to talk about, and here's the win. Because sometimes I've done there like, well, I don't really want to talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Then what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Let's start back over, because if you don't get that, again, the coaching session can be great, but it's their time. Right.
Yeah. I think too, helping people to visualize or talk about what I'm a very visual person. So, and some of my coaching clients I know are visual as well. So being able to, if they can't talk about something in more of a, rational or logical way, saying to them, what are you seeing? Just describe, because usually people have an image in their mind and they're just maybe have a hard time turning it into words. So just kind of like the what's possible. What are you seeing? What does success look like? What are you envisioning in your mind?
Yeah,
I love hearing
I think
people's
that whole
answers
vision,
to that.
one of the questions I like to ask too is like, let's say we're sitting here a year from now. What's the win look like?
Yeah.
If you're looking back, okay, how do you want this to look a year from now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To get them, gets them to dream a little bit.
Yes, I love that.
As opposed to, I don't know.
Because when you're feeling stuck, the dreaming is not there. And the what's possible is what is not there. It's just, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I am in this moment and I can't see past this moment and I don't know how to get out of this moment. And so being able to start coming at that with a few different types of what's possible questions, or what could it look like, or how do you want this to be different, and what would that mean for you? Those are really powerful questions.
Yeah, and I think we both learned early on the why questions are not powerful.
Yeah.
Because the minute you say why, well, why did you do that? Why would that make sense? Think about it. It takes us to a negative.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why I'm doing right. It's the what's possible. I think some other ones, after somebody's, what's possible. What would it look like if you did that?
Yeah.
What would it look like if you didn't do that?
Exactly.
Right.
What's like the half step? I was going to say some of my favorite Bruce questions.
Is that my guy? What would a half step look like?
What would a half step look like? Just like the right next step or the little half step.
Yeah, what's the wise
next? If one step seems too big. Yeah. I also like you ask, what's the why and what's the when?
Yeah.
I feel like you ask that one a lot, and that's a good one.
Or go back to, with that, what's the very worst thing that could happen, right?
Oh,
because we get into that loop, and I think, I don't say we're all this, but we're thinking about something, and what do I say? Within like 7 seconds, like the end of the world has happened.
Yeah.
Because that's our. So what's the worst? Really, if what's the worst that can happen? And then if they baseline it, I don't know what the worst is for them.
Right. What is it for you?
Then they can take. Well, yeah, that's right. That's not. And another question that I'll use sometimes is, what do you know to be true? Not what do you, go back. What do you know to be true about this situation? What do you know to be true about yourself? What do you know to be true about whatever? Because once people align back to that, then they can start moving forward. But that's really not true about this. Or that's not true about me.
That's such a good question.
Yeah. You're writing that one down.
I'm stealing that right now. I don't think I used that one.
What's a half step?
I do that one.
What does a half step look like? What's the what?
What do you know?
What's the when? What is true about ...
What's interesting, I'll tell you the question that I teach the most when I'm teaching coaching is help me understand. Because I do think a lot of times when you're talking about kids, for example, and maybe a child comes to you and they're really upset and you kind of want to go into parent fix-it mode, just asking that, help me understand what's causing you to be so upset about this, or help me understand why things happen this way, or just being able, instead of just immediately launching into problem solve it, fix it mode as a leader or as a parent, whatever context it shows up. I love that question for people to just gather a little bit more information before they dive into the solutioning.
Or maybe a better question is, don't say help me understand, because it's really not about me.
True.
But it is. But so what's going on? How are you feeling? I've got a daughter-in-law, shout out Heather.
Hi,
who
Heather.
Does a great job with our grandkids about those things. What were you thinking? Why are you sad? What's going on?
Yeah, what's going on?
Before I even, and as parents, we need to.
Yeah.
It's not like just coaching. Let me ask you some questions. 6-year-old Judah, and you'll figure it out.
What's a half step look like
Judah,
for you?
But getting to understand what their world.
Yeah.
Which is what coaches do. It's their world. And my wife and I marvel sometimes we didn't ask those questions to our kids. So shout out Heather.
Any relationship that you're in, just because if you see someone's having an extreme, for them, reaction, if it's someone that you know well and you're like, gosh, this person's really fired up about something that I don't think is a big deal, instead of saying you're overreacting, that's not a big deal, being able to say, I can see that, or I sense that you're really upset about this. Help me understand, or what's going on there.
When you talk about coaching, right? Not just, it's not how I feel, but that's not a normal reaction for the client.
Exactly.
Especially if we've been coaching for 6-7 months, right?
Yes, and it's know them.
That's not, and sometimes it's like, hey, permission to ask, right? And sometimes we ask that, can I have permission to wade in here? Because if they say no.
Yeah. Are you comfortable sharing? That's usually what I'll say. Are you comfortable sharing?
But part of it can be like, wow, that was a reaction. That doesn't line up with whatever. Is that something, because sometimes they don't know it.
Yeah. And that's, again, I think that's one of the gifts of having a coach, is that someone who's that actively listening to you and paying attention to you, they're looking for patterns and themes. I had a coaching conversation last week where someone said this person's name like 3 or 4 times. And I was just like, you've mentioned this person's name 3 or 4 times. Is there something going on between the two of you, or because I was sensing kind of this like passive aggressive mentioning of the name, and I'm like, what's going on there? And there was a exactly we have beef. I'm like, well, that's
okay.
You want to talk about it? Yeah. You don't have to, but is that something you want to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, all of those things. Yeah, I mean, I think that just those questions of being able to, again, it goes back to drawing out. What questions can you use to draw out? And when I was thinking about this, actually this morning, I'm like, more and more companies with managers and staff are helping those leaders get trained in taking a coach approach to helping their team rather than the tell approach, right?
Yes.
Sitting in a one-on-one. Individual that works for me, we had a meeting, said, hey, do you have a couple minutes after that? Sure. Here was the scenario. This was going on. And I'm like, okay. And that person was waiting for me to say, well, here's the 3 things you should do. And my first thing is like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know.
Okay.
Well, what could you do? What are some options? Unlocked it. Well, I could this. Okay, what do you want to do with this person? What do you want? And so that's in a setting where it's not like it's a formal client-coach relationship. It's day-to-day and using those things that we learn, and it's just more and more. I'm sensing that that's where companies are going to go to.
Yes,
because it helps. Because when an employee gets unstuck, they're just not just this issue. They're better to just do their job and move on.
Well, and if you think about, you're right. So Gallup's done a lot of research in this area too, in terms of what the current workforce is looking for out of their leaders, and one of the things is the coaching approach. I don't want a boss. I want a coach. Right. And they don't want to be told what to do. If you think about different definitions of leadership, I mean, mine is just enabling the success of others. So if you think about if my job as a leader is to unlock your potential and to allow you to have the greatest levels of success, how am I going to do that? Is it through telling you what to do, pouring in, as you said, or drawing out?
Yeah.
And it's similar when you think about it to what we're trying to do with our coaching clients. It's
same skill sets.
Exactly.
That's and I'm an old guy based on my 35 plus years. I grew up in a command and control environment.
Exactly.
And it was do this.
Because
and it
I
was
said
like,
so.
And it was like, okay. I mean, there were times I was like, I don't want to do that. But, and there's all different things, and I think over time, then it was like, well, we're going to go totally from command and control, and hey, it's every person for themselves.
Yes, completely flat hierarchy.
And so I think this coaching, as it's gotten more recognition, and people are saying, hey, you know what, it works. Like, why wouldn't we apply that to
right.
our day-to-day leadership and development.
Yeah. And it's a skill. So, I mean, that's something I think that we've both done, as well as teaching coaching to others within organizations of how to help equip leaders with the skills to coach, because it's, again, not something that comes naturally or are what we draw in our mind as an effective coach. A lot of times people refer back to a sports example and they think about sports coaches that they
had a bad coach, and that's like, I'm not gonna do that,
and so it's not necessarily it. So let's talk about the value of coaching, because I think this is, for me, one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about coaching is because I have seen firsthand what it's done for people, and I've experienced it for myself, which is why.
Well, I think that's the first part, right? You see the value in it.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when I started getting into this. Most of the folks that were already coaches had a coach. And I'm like, why do you need a coach if you're a coach, right? And then it's like, well, because we get stuck, right?
Yeah.
And so the value that we get out of it every day, we have our own value when we're being coached, but we see the transformation.
Yeah.
We see the change. We see the aha. We see the light bulb go on, the countenance change, and we know that everyone can use that.
Absolutely.
Everyone can use it.
Absolutely.
So how that's done, but the value, the value's there, and whether that's, corporate, business, spiritual coaching.
Coaching.
Helping people get unstuck spiritually is just as valuable, maybe more valuable than helping them get unstuck from a career issue or helping them get unstuck from a whatever. And, you were talking about sports, right? Well, when you're little, there's still a lot of telling because I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
But like NBA, NFL and all that. What's the coach doing there? I'm trying to get the most out of you.
For sure.
I'm trying to have you get the most out of you, really.
Exactly.
And so they still call them coaches, but it's a totally different thing than, and you probably have seen it with your son, big baseball player. Early on, it was much more telling.
Oh, yeah. And teaching. Here's how you play the game.
As more of drawing out, hey, what would you do
now
there?
I see potential in this kid to be a really great catcher.
What would you have done in the situation?
Yeah.
What could you have done in the situation?
Let's talk about, you just got picked off on first base. Let's talk about what happened there and what we can do differently next time.
But I think that's the value. And I think part of that then is how do you help people that have never been coached, who've had a bad experience, see that value?
Exactly. And maybe if it helps, I brought the metrics from ICF. Our friends at ICF did research the value of coaching. So I'll just run through those very quickly. It impacts productivity. So 70% increased work performance, 61% improved business management, 57% improved time management. 51% improved team effectiveness, because there's a lot of time team coaching and group coaching. Those are similar but different. Then you've got what's happening within. So 80% improved self-confidence, 73% improved relationships, 72% improved communication skills, 67% improved work-life balance, which I think is interesting because, again, even if it's more of executive coaching or something that people don't associate with life, it still impacts life. And then from a return on investment perspective, there are 68% for individuals that made back at least their investment. And then from a company perspective, 86% that at least made back their investment, if not more from there. So and I've seen other metrics that say it's typically 5 to 7 times whatever the dollar amount investment is in terms of ROI from a company or individual perspective.
Yeah, and there is an investment. We talked about that. Money,
there is an
time,
investment. Yes, absolutely.
But it's like what, if you want to get better in anything,
right,
you got to pay the price, whatever that is. And
exactly.
It's not,
We've talked about that. I mean, I I pay for my son to have private sports lessons to help him achieve his goals. He has specific goals that he wants to go after, and that's an investment I make in him. But what I think is interesting about parents is we're usually far more apt to invest in our children.
Sure we are.
And their sports and activities than ourselves. Exactly. And think about, in a lot of cases, that probably would make me a better parent for my child if I invested in myself.
Which is interesting because most of the companies or clients I've worked with, they're far more interested in investing in the top than everybody else. And it's just, we're getting it wrong. And being able to invest and coach from all the different levels will have an amazing impact on your culture, on your ROI, all of that, your profitability, all that for companies.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really cool when you go into organizations, if you're able to do an entire team or an entire group of people. You talk about impacting a culture. Yeah. Wow. If you're able to really get in there and start working with people individually, and it's not like you sit and talk about, well, I had a conversation with John and then I talked to Sally over here.
It's moving the group forward.
Exactly.
Because the group's stuck. Yeah. Or the team.
Super valuable. So I want to hear from you just some examples of maybe coaching goals that people have had, things that you've helped people with, as well as success stories. You can approach it however it makes most sense for you.
I think most of it is around, it's everything. It's tough because a success to get somebody unstuck might seem like that's not a big deal. It's a big deal to them.
It is.
And so, I don't want to paint a picture that's like, I've got this and now I'm going to, because it's about the client and whatever it is about them that they need. But I think the success ends up being that the client sees value and continues to coach. And I've had some that we've both said, you know what, I think it's run its course.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I have such a hard time breaking up with my coaching clients.
Well, because it's about you. What did I do wrong? No, let's
I care though. I'm like invested in their journey.
I know, and you're like, huh?
I'm not going to get to hear how they're doing anymore.
But it's really that I think success would be what the clients or the coachees would have to say about it. And it's when I coach you, right? The success can be, well, it was this little tiny thing that moved the needle here so I could do this.
Yeah.
That's a success.
Absolutely.
It's in fact, I think those sometimes are far more impactful than, I'm here and I got to go all the way to here. It's like, well, okay, that here in 3 months might not be here. You might be over here now. And really trying to help them, again, unfold what's important to them. And how do you define success? I'd be interested if I gave you the list of the people I coach, you ask them what they feel is a success.
What's been a success? I think
maybe I don't want you to do that.
People achieving their goals. I have some clients who will come into situations with very specific goals, like a business owner that says, I want to achieve X amount of dollars in revenue by X date or whatever. And it's okay. Like they have a very clear target in their mind, and just being a part of seeing that happen, I think is really motivating and inspiring.
But sometimes they come into that and that can be their what.
Yeah.
But by asking questions, it's like, maybe I can't get there because I got to do this first. Okay, right? And so even if they've got very clear goals going into it, by helping them unpack it, they might be like that. Or I've had here's where I want to get to, right? Here's the revenue number I want to get to.
Yeah.
So what's important about that number?
Yeah.
Well, I need this like that. Oh, it's a bank covenant. Okay. What about this? They end up being like, maybe I'm thinking too small.
Yeah.
This conversation was too good for just 2 episodes. So come back next week for part 3.